Let's rewind the clock a little bit, about 5 years. In the summer of 2020, I was lucky enough that the area where I live in opened up theaters, and I got to see a couple movies I had missed the first time around, as well as some that I had watched countless times but always wanted to see on the big screen. One movie that caught my attention was Peninsula, or, as the full title goes, Train to Busan presents Peninsula. That's right, it's a continuation of the Korean zombie flick that took the world by storm back in 2016, combining the fast-moving undead of World War Z with the secluded survival of Snowpiercer. The director of the original movie must have had some intention of turning this into a franchise, as there was an animated prequel released a month after the first movie called Seoul Station, and there is currently still talk of a third film. But does this second entry hold up? Was it worth the 4-year wait? Or is this a sequel whose potential has rotted away with the zombies? The story picks up about 4 years after the outbreak, and the world has managed to contain the virus to South Korea. A former military sergeant, Jung-seok, and his brother-in-law, Cho-min, have taken refuge in Hong Kong, where they're scraping by to raise enough money to leave the slums. That opportunity arrives as a local gangster offers them a job: retrieve a food truck holding $20 million in bags from the zombie-infested city of Incheon. Jung-seok is hesitant to go back, but is convinced otherwise when he and Cho-min are guaranteed $1 million each. Once there, things are immediately complicated thanks to a militia of bandits and a family living in the city. I like the idea that the outbreak is confined to one country, rather than spread across the globe. Most of the time, the zombies pop up everywhere and then the whole world goes to hell in a matter of days. By keeping it in a certain area, rather than making it global, it opens up the exploration of how the rest of the world reacts to the grim reality that zombies are real, and how the survivors are treated. Imagine if there was a sequel to 28 Days Later that explored how the rest of the world reacted to the UK being completely overrun. The movie briefly touches on both subjects in a scene where the two main characters get heckled at, are alienated, and are accused of being carriers of the virus because of where they came from. It was an interesting bit, especially in the time the movie came out, but that's as far as the movie goes in terms of commentary. There's definitely a strong sense of tension once we return to Korea, as the abandoned city at night lets off an eerie tone. A horde of zombies could be hiding around the corner, under the bridge, or packed together in a train station, the glass threatening to break and spill the undead onto unsuspecting wanderers. However, that tension is nullified with the arrival of Sergeant Hwang, the second in command of an underground fight club and the leader of Unit 631, former military soldiers who went rogue during the outbreak. He reminds me a little bit of Negan from The Walking Dead, in terms of his swagger, his attitude, and his sense of humor. Once the whole Unit 631 subplot is introduced, as well as a car drive sequence that lasts far too long, it turns from horror into more of an action thriller. There's another group of characters in this city, a family comprised of a mother, her father, and her 2 daughters, who have been spending the last 4 years trying to get out of the country. The introduction of the sisters is something straight out of a Fast and Furious movie. Speeding through the streets, tight turns, and constant gear shifts. Once this scene shows up, any remaining tension and horror goes out the window. What made the first movie work so well was its dedication to location. Other than the opening, the ending, and a select scene in the middle, the entire film takes place on the train. And because of that, you feel the helplessness, the fear, and the panic that the characters are going through. The lack of that same sense of confinement, or at least terror, makes Peninsula dependent on action rather than character, on cheap thrills rather than genuine ones. The original had fight scenes where anyone could be killed at any time, and their weapons and resources were limited. Here, the characters have all the guns and ammo they could possibly need. They do try to interject some form of urgency with the underground zombie fight club, but that feels like something that should have been saved for the final act, rather than a random place in the middle of the movie. Another aspect the first movie does better is character. You have the strained father-daughter relationship, which acts as the emotional anchor throughout Train to Busan. You don't really get that from Jung-seok and Cho-min in Peninsula. They feel like characters that you're supposed to be emotionally invested in because, well, the movie says you have to. There is some fun to be had with this movie. The final chase scene between Unit 631 and the protagonist is a welcome reminder of Mad Max Fury Road. Car versus car warfare, but with zombies added to the mix. It culminates in a pretty spectacular fashion, but it's immediately undermined by its ending. I'm actually going to give some spoilers for this part. They get to the dock and you think, okay, they'll get on the ship, but nope, it's overrun, and they're stuck there now. Then there's the possibility that their helicopter's coming in, so they get running. The mother gets injured and she's about to take her own life, but then Jung-sik goes back to help her. It feels as if the writer just took all his ideas and mashed them together, as if he wanted the gloom of Train to Busan, but also wanted to change things up and have a more upbeat ending. Whatever the case, the ending goes on for far too long and really tests your patience. By this point in 2020, it had been months since I'd gone to the movie theater, and I had been eager to go back. And Peninsula seemed to be the perfect excuse. Despite the 4-year gap, or maybe because of it, this sequel is sourly disappointing, lacking the emotional depth, effective storytelling, and use of its environment that made Train to Busan the memorable film that it was. I'm going to give the first movie an 8.5 out of 10, whereas with Peninsula, I'm thinking a mediocre at best 5 out of 10. 5 out of 10, maybe even a 4.8.